We start with the film which is leading the pack for this year's Oscars. The Revenant is directed by the Mexican filmmaker Alejandro Inarritu, who won Best Film for Birdman last year. But it couldn't be more different. The Revenant is an epic adventure story set in the American Wild West of the 1820s. The plot's relatively simple. It's based on the true story of an American fur trapper who is mauled by a grizzly bear and then left to die by the men who have been paid to stay with him. Through sheer force of will, he survives the attack to crawl his way through hundreds of miles of unmapped, snowy wilderness looking for revenge. Leonardo Di Caprio plays the lead in an extraordinary performance that has earned him his 5th Oscar nomination for Best Actor. Here he is, turning up at like a ghost at the fort, looking for his nemesis, played by Tom Hardy.
He knows how far I came for him. Same as that elk, when they get afraid, they run deep into the woods. I got him trapped, he doesn't know it yet.
How can you be so sure?
I think he has everything to lose.
I can't let you go back out there. Not again.
I ain't afraid to die anymore. I've done it already.
Leonardo DiCaprio and Domhnall Gleeson in The Revenant. Shot by the Oscar-winning cinematographer Chivo Lubetsky, this is a cinematic historical epic made for the big screen. It's beautiful, but quite languorous. When I met Leonardo DiCaprio yesterday, minutes after the Oscar nominations had been announced, I asked if film audiences used to seeing action-packed superhero movies were ready for this.
The proof is in the pudding now. I think there was a lot of doubt about whether people wanted to see it, but I remember discussing it very early on. What were the commercial aspects of this movie? Because you have these discussions of whether it's got this sequence, that type of character. Does it have a superhero in it? Is there room to do multiples of this movie? And no, this was a completely unique experience. But I say this a lot to people. You cannot determine what audiences are going to feel when they know that there's a specific director at the helm that's going to give them an experience that they never had. And I felt that way with Wolf of Wall Street. People are saying, oh, well, there's too much sex, there's too much drugs, this doesn't fit the mold of what people want to go see. But having Martin Scorsese make a film about that subject, the more extreme you go, the better. People actually, there's an appetite to see stuff like that. It's actually kind of like a superhero. You know what I mean? And this is an experience where people are talking about, ooh, the violence, it's so visceral, it's too real, it's too tangible. But you have Alejandro Inarritu, who just, did Birdman, who they love what he's doing cinematically, and yeah, that's actually an attraction.
Now this obviously couldn't be more different than Birdman, and Wolf of Wall Street, which were sort of urban interior films. This is outside, this is the wilderness. And I know that Inarritu wanted the movie to be as authentic as possible, so you did film in Canada and Argentina. There are hardly any special effects. But what I was interested in is the fact that it was shot almost entirely with natural light and these very long single-shot takes, which require huge preparation and planning. And presumably that means that you, as the actor, kind of have one go at getting it right. Does that put a lot of pressure on you?
Yes and no. I'd say actually the adjustment process from the onset was a very difficult one for all the actors, because you're having to fit your performance into a very specific shot structure.
I mean, the sun has to be at a certain angle, the bison...
Not only that, there's 1,000 extras behind you. There's Chivo, our fabulous cinematographer, literally
multi-Oscar winning,
moving the camera around your face, literally like almost taking your pulse with the camera. You feel the breath of the actors. For example, the opening sequence, we spent 3 weeks rehearsing the opening shot. And every single day was all rehearsal, all day long, and then we had this very tense hour and a half where everyone needed to be on the money. It was like performing live theater. If we didn't pull it off in the hour and a half, we were there the next day to try to recreate it again. But what you get is a comfort level and a stability within what you want to do as an actor, because you know everything that's going to go on around you. It's almost like knowing the gears of a Swiss watch, and then you get to settle into your performance and focus on what you need to do as an actor. And that's actually, once you lock into that sort of feeling, it's actually incredibly rewarding.
I know that Inarritu, the director, said that you were very keen to explore your limits while filming this, and they certainly put you through it. You're plunged into icy water a lot, you're stripped naked, eat raw bison liver and so on. Was there anything that you said no to?
No, there's nothing I said no to, because we're of the ilk, Alejandro and I, that pain is temporary, film is forever. If you're going to go there and bring thousands of people off to distant locations and get one shot at doing something, as long as it's not going to, hurt you or kill you, go for it. It's going to create something unique. So there's nothing I said no to, but it's been weird because so much of the focus has been on the arduous, task of pulling this movie off, which at times feels bizarre because you look at the hardships of what people are going through in the rest of the world, and you feel guilty talking about how difficult it was to make a movie. I mean, at the end of the day, we got to go back to warm homes, and we had warm trailers, and hundreds of people looking out for us. But as far as a cinematic, experience and making movies, yes, this was the most difficult I've ever had.
It's interesting you use that expression, cinematic experience, because we live in an age where a lot of the best sort of cinema talent has migrated to television. It's the golden age of television, no doubt about it. It's fantastic, but there's almost something quite old-fashioned about the epic quality of this film, isn't there?
For sure, and I think it's a rarity, an absolute rarity, that this movie even got made, and it's only because we had financiers, really a financier in Arnon Milchan, who's an art collector, who basically said, I want to look at this as, a great piece of art on my wall. So he kept going for it, even when the chips were stacked up against us, even when we had weather conditions that had to make us stop filming for weeks at a time, the budget escalated. We had to move to the southern tip of Argentina just to find snow. There was so many things that worked against us in making this movie, but you're right, it is the golden era of television, and I think the movies that are going to survive in the theaters for sure are the ones that give an audience a spectacle. I'm a cinema lover. There are great cinema lovers out there, people who really love movies, and a lot of their favorite films come from the era where the directors were king and they were able to take chances. The bear sequence, Alejandro watched 100 different bear attacks to create that sequence. That stuff doesn't happen by accident.
Let's talk about that sequence, because it's one of the most amazing scenes in the film. It's quite early on. You get attacked by a grizzly bear. Obviously, you had to use CGI, otherwise I wouldn't be talking to you now. But how do you act that? I mean, have you got a guy in a bear suit rolling around in the snow with you?
He doesn't want me to talk in specifics about how he pulled that off, because many of these directors, they do feel like magicians in the sense that if they let all their tricks go, I want to respect that and be fair. But I will say, it was in the natural environment. There was many other people that I was working with, and there was CGI elements involved in it. But what he gives you is almost something like virtual reality experience. It does feel like you're there. You feel the breath of the animal. You feel the moments of silence, which are so incredibly important to that sequence.
It's very traumatic. I felt exhausted watching it.
It was exhausting doing it too. But the truth is, I really do feel that we're kind of desensitized to action sequences in a way. You see characters flying, smashing into buildings, and things zooming all over the screen, and it has a weightless sort of fantastical quality to it. All the CG that he used in this movie was to ground it, to feel the weight of the animal, to make it feel more like a documentary, which is something you're not going to see very often.
As you've said, a lot of the press coverage so far is concentrated on the very difficult conditions. Do you think that kind of discomfort makes for a better performance?
I think that getting yourself out of a certain comfort zone that you have making movies, I've found that some of the most uncomfortable experiences that I've had making movies have proven to be some of the best and most successful, ironically. That's the truth of the matter. But, I knew that Alejandro saw in his eyes that he wanted to go down the heart of darkness, so to speak. When he was talking to me about making this movie, he's like, I don't know, I just want to get lost. He wanted to put himself deep into the natural world and try to find the poetry in this man's story.
Now, another subject very close to your heart is climate change. I know you're in the process of making a documentary on this subject. I mean, ironic in some ways that The Revenant was affected by global warming. You actually ran out of snow, as you said, and had to move from Canada to Argentina. I mean, is there a takeaway from this film that audiences should take away about man, nature, survival?
I don't know if audiences are going to take it away. I think that, certainly this story has to do with this capitalistic surge out west to extract resources, the decimation of indigenous cultures. It has to do with capitalism. Alejandro wanted us to submerge ourselves in the natural world and see what questions came out of that experience. And for me, having spent a year there, having submerged ourselves in these elements and seeing how the difference of 1 degree, what it can do to an entire landscape between snow and water. 1 degree. We were witnessing firsthand climate change with our own eyes, having to relocate to the southern tip of the world to find snow, and being in an environment where locals were telling us this is all unprecedented. This has never happened in the history of our region. To me, it's almost like a crazy science fiction film, what's going on in our planet. It's like aliens invading from another planet, except we're the ones that are doing it. I'd like to end this interview on a very positive note. No, it's something that I have to continue talking about, and everyone needs to talk about. It's scary.
Leonardo DiCaprio, and The Revenant is in cinemas today, certificate 15, and I think it is a visual poem that should be seen on the big screen.